So the topic is the influence of Jewish heritage jurisprudence or fiqh. We want to discuss, for example, how some Islamic scholars served Jewish interests. Jewish beliefs began entering Islamic sources as early as the 1st century of the Hijra calendar. For example, the doctrine of predestination or Jabr is a Jewish concept. Or some legal rulings such as stoning or rajm also have Jewish roots. Okay, let's talk about the presence of Jews in early Islamic history. To understand Islamic history, we must recognize that Jews were aware of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the beginning. They knew the place and time of his emergence. The Quran states they recognize him as they recognize their own sons. This is in Surah Baqarah 146. Consequently, they settled in Medina, in Hijaz, because they knew that he will be there. This is one reason. However, their opposition began when they realized that the Prophet was from the lineage of Ishmael, not Isaac. Because even they were waiting for him and they thought he will be from the lineage of Isaac, so he will be a Jew, but then they understood that no, he will be from Ishmael. Many reports suggest that Jews attempted to assassinate the Prophet before his birth. Abdullah, the Prophet's father, died mysteriously in Medina. The only account of his death comes from Ibn Ka'b, a Jewish narrator. So, and he was very young. Abdullah was young. He went from Mecca to Medina and then he died there. Similar doubts exist regarding the death of Amina, mother of the Prophet, that she died in her way back from Medina. And Hashim, his grandfather, the grandfather of Prophet Muhammad. Even Jewish attempts to eliminate the Prophet in childhood. There are narrations suggesting that Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of Prophet Muhammad, fearing for the Prophet's life, entrusted him to a wet nurse, Halima as-Sa'diyah. She was chosen because she was from a poor tribe, making her an unlikely target of suspicion. At least they wanted to hide Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from people in Mecca. Ibn Sa'd in his Tabaqat, in his book Tabaqat, narrates that a group of Jews attempted to kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but that he managed to escape. Regarding the Quranic verse, and he found you lost and guided you, in Surah Duha, verse 7, Alam yajidka dhallan fahada. Some interpretations suggest that the Prophet was in a state of wandering due to attempts on his life. Additionally, in the case of Abraha's attack on Mecca, it is important to note that Jews had a significant presence in Yemen at that time. There were likely a connection between the wealthy Jewish elite and the new ruler Abraha. You know the story of Abraha, that he decided to come to Mecca and destroy Kaaba. We see that Jews were around Abraha in Yemen. Okay, let's talk about Jewish opposition to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the Prophet migrated to Medina, Jews were forced to accept his leadership since they were a minority. The Prophet established the Constitution of Medina, making the first time in history that a legal framework guaranteed equal rights for all citizens, Muslim and non-Muslims. This treaty legally recognized the Jewish presence in Medina. However, in the Battle of Badr and Uhud, while the Jews appeared to collaborate with the Muslims, their true intent was to undermine the Muslim community from within. After the Battle of Uhud, the Prophet ﷺ only allowed those who had fought and were injured to accompany him in pursuing the Quraysh forces. This was to ensure that no infiltrators were among them, because he understood that some hypocrites and some Jews inside the army are against Muslims. Let's speak about the role of Jews in distorting Islamic teachings. After the Prophet's demise or martyrdom, the Jews sought to influence government in a way that protected their interests. They actively worked to keep Imam Ali, who was from the Prophet and his knowledge was the knowledge of Prophet ﷺ, away from power. Also, the Quran remained unchanged. Its interpretation was manipulated. During the caliphate of the early rulers, hadith transmission was restricted, providing Jews with an opportunity to introduce fabricated narrations. The most well-known figure in this effort was Ka'b al-Ahbar, a learned Jewish scholar from Yemen, the same region as Abu Huraira. Ka'b al-Ahbar was not a companion or Sahaba. He didn't see Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet during the rule of Caliph Umar, he was given a prominent platform, even delivering speeches in the Prophet's mosque. Arabs had a cultural for storytelling, a method the Quran itself employs. Ka'b exploited this, narrating embellished and often misleading stories which many people readily accepted. So he had this position. A Jew who didn't know a lot about Islam. At least he was not a scholar in Islam. Some prominent companions such as Abu Dharr al-Ghifari strongly opposed Ka'b al-Ahbar. However, Abu Dharr was eventually exiled, allowing Ka'b and his associates to continue spreading their influence unchecked. So what is the conclusion? The infiltration of Jewish beliefs into Islam affected various aspects, including Israeliyat or narrations of Jewish origin, concepts about God's attributes, including anthropomorphism or tajsim that now we have in Sunni Islam, stories of the prophets often distorting their moral integrity, denial of prophetic infallibility or usma, misinterpretation of destiny or divine decree, and afterlife or ma'ad, and jurisprudential rulings influenced by Jewish law. Ka'b al-Ahbar and his associates were able to freely propagate their ideas as there were little opposition to counter them. Given 20 years, particularly in Medina, the heart of Islamic scholarship, it was sufficient for them to establish a corrupt intellectual foundation. One cannot simply claim that Judaism influenced politics or that politics influenced Judaism, because for Jews, religion and politics have always been inseparable. So when we speak about the Jewish, how they influence Islam, it is about religion and about politics.